Tell us about how Hugo came to be appointed as Chancellor of the diocese.
Hugo started to work in the diocese as my personal assistant, so he had to look after the diary, make sure I got to meetings on time, etc., looking after me. Then later on, he became the Vice-Chancellor, took on that role as well, and then the opening came for a Chancellor of the diocese. Hugo applied, and he was successful.
Hugo, you're the youngest Chancellor of a Catholic diocese in Australia. What's the role been like?
The role as the youngest Chancellor in Australia has been quite mind-opening, really. I didn't realise how much was involved with being a Chancellor. I've always met Chancellors in the past and seen what they have done, but once you're actually in the role, you realise how busy Chancellors are and how much work they do for the diocese and the bishop and for the clergy and for the education system, and just there's quite a lot involved, but so far it's been very rewarding.
What does the role entail, and how might it be different to the role of other Chancellors in Australian dioceses?
I think the role of a Chancellor, which is traditionally the record keeper of the diocese, has changed over the years, especially here in the Church in Australia. The role of the Chancellor is very wide and lots of job descriptions go around it. But in Wilcannia-Forbes, putting away being the youngest person as the Chancellor, I think the difference in the Diocese of Wilcannia-Forbes is that the role of the Chancellor has so many aspects to it. It's not just the official role of the Chancellor. There's, as the Bishop mentioned, there's been the PA, Safeguarding Officer, Master of Ceremonies of the Diocese, liturgical things, making sure liturgies are done well, etc., helping and organising the everyday life of the Bishop. So one minute you could be putting an appointment for the Bishop to go for a meeting, and the next minute you're doing an important policy report regarding safeguarding. So it's in Wilcannia-Forbes, it's lots of different hats rolled into the one position. So yeah, I think that's how it would be different. And being a younger person in that role, there's a lot of learning to do and listening to others and to other chancellors across Australia. So I think that's where the difference lies.
You also have to be very articulate in order to do videos like this. As you can see, Hugo is very articulate, smooth, and knows what to say.
Bishop Columba, what are your thoughts on how Hugo is going in the role? What are some of the benefits of having a person like Hugo working closely with you?
Well, Hugo, like he just said, big learning curve. He's got to learn how the church operates, and it sometimes can be very complicated. He has to work out how the bishop operates, which is even more complicated than how the church operates sometimes. Because it's such a close relationship, you've got to actually be on the same wavelength as the bishop, and that's really difficult when you've got a bishop like myself to get on my wavelength. You have to be really sort of, a bit psycho yourself really. But anyway, Hugo's got that ability to get on my wavelength, which is great, and he brings youth and excitement, sort of enthusiasm, all those things, and I think that's what Hugo brings to the chancery and that role of chancellor, because often it's something that the church needs. It needs a bit more enthusiasm and positive thinking, etc., etc. In a diocese like ours, we particularly need that, because we can go through drought, we've got financial problems, all the difficulties, and we can just get into a rut of just surviving. Whereas Hugo gives that sort of energy and positivity of youth to say that we can do more than survive, we can thrive.
Bishop Columba is a busy man with travel and various commitments. Hugo, how do you support Bishop Columba to keep a balance of ministry commitments, personal care, and the professional burdens of being a bishop?
That's a very big question.
Be careful, Hugo.
Very careful. I guess one of the things you've got to do as a PA, away from being the Chancellor, is that's your role. That is the high point of your role, is assuring that the bishop's life is not overcrowded. When you first start as a PA to a bishop, I have found, You try to book up the bishop as much as you can because everyone wants a piece of the bishop. So you just automatically think, oh, well, that's the role of the bishop, therefore everyone needs to see him, so they come through you, you book them up on the calendar. But then you slowly learn that the role of a bishop is not just a diocesan-focused role, it's a national role. There are different commissions of the Australian Bishops' Conference, there's various meetings, so you've got to learn how to ensure that the bishop's life is spread out both personally, spiritually, and professionally as a bishop to make sure that, you know, he doesn't go into overdrive. And it's a very hard concept, and I rely on a lot of other PAs across Australia to see how they do it for their bishops. But it's a matter of learning, saying this is the day off, this is the day he has meetings, he starts at this time, finishes at this time. And just being there as a support network as well, just someone to talk to and have a coffee with here and there, and just to debrief the day with the staff of the chancery and all that. And just, I think all those things linked together makes the bishop's life a little bit more easy and bearable in these interesting times. So,
how do you both resolve conflicts and problems?
Well, we don't have really too much conflict. I think if your communication's good and effective, then you sort of waylay confrontation and conflict. If you don't, if one person doesn't know what the other one's thinking and doing, and then everyone goes on their own little path, and then suddenly there's a clash, well, that's when you might have some problems. So I think the communication is pretty good, and we listen. And from my perspective as a bishop, and just goes for all bishops because you're also the boss, you've got to be prepared to listen and not just think you know all the answers, and that helps. So as Hugo just said, he's got to tell me when my day off and rack off and get out of the office, and you know, to work I have to listen to that, and he runs my diary, so I have to be able to say, well, okay, you've put that in. I have to trust Hugo, the chancellor, in his role, so you don't micromanage. I think that helps. You actually got to work together.
I don't think so. We've had a conflict yet, and I hope we don't. Yeah, I think, as the bishop said, communication is at the key and the heart of everything you do. And I think also too, in the role of the chancellor, in that role of PA and working for the bishop, there's a sense of godliness to how you look at the role. You know, I think the church can sometimes get too caught up in an incorporation, becomes a business model, and that's where the conflicts happen, because we see it as an incorporation, a business type. You can fight with your boss and all that. Whereas I see it's a vocation. You're working for the mission of the church and the gospel here in Wilcannia-Forbes, and you're working for the bishop. So that spiritual element too also helps those resolutions as well, that we're here for the mission of the church in Wilcannia-Forbes. We're not here for our own selves, we're here for the people in the diocese. So that mixed with communication skills and the ability to talk and to listen to one another, I think that's how we do it.
I'd add some humour into that too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of laughter, and we take each other off quite a lot, and Hugo sort of does a very mean imitation of me. And that often brings a lot of laughter. And you know, and I laugh when he does that too. So, you know, and Hugo's famous for his little idiosyncratic rants that he would go on, and something we all laugh at that. We're comfortable to be able to laugh about ourselves and bring humour into it. And I think in a lot of workplaces and a lot of places, people are a bit too precious and they can't actually have a laugh, and there's no place for humour. And I think that's really important to have humour.
Do you have a strong friendship that makes working together much easier? If so, how?
Yes, I think I do have a strong friendship with the bishop. One thing that could go with one of the earlier questions about what makes me different as well as the Chancellor. I actually was a student training for the priesthood for this diocese. So I've known the bishop for a long time, and when I made the prayerful decision to leave formation for ministry, I applied for the job as PA and was successful. So I knew the bishop already. I already had that friendship with the bishop as his student for the priesthood. So that's also made it very different in the role as well. So I've known the bishop. I'm not as new as some others who, just apply for the job and get it. So I think having a friendship with the bishop, both on a social and professional level, is really important. Like I said before, that whole idea of a business model church, I don't like. I think it needs to be a family orientated understanding of church. We can be friends, we can have a laugh and have humour. And I think that's what the church needs, and that's the important part, and which I love in my role. We are one big family. The chancery is a family. Our education system with us, we're all a big diocesan family. We work with our parishes, our priests, our staff, our employees. So it's not only me who has that friendship with the bishop, it's the entire diocese. And I think what that does as well, and the importance of that, is it gives the church the opportunity for a greater respect of the role of the bishop. Yes, the bishop is our boss, the bishop is the shepherd of the entire diocese, but also he's a friend of us. A bit like, they're supposed to imitate Jesus, the Good Shepherd. So when you have that friendship with the bishop, whether it would be myself or other chancery members or Catholic education officers, principals, staff, whatever, we see the bishop and as Jesus, the Good Shepherd, leading us. And that makes a better workplace, that makes a better diocese. And the one thing that Bishop Columba has brought to us in the diocese is not this authoritarian model, whereas I'm the bishop, you listen to me, he's a friend of ours and we're a friend of his, and we work together, we communicate together. And so I think that's really important in that friendship level. So, and we can have a coffee, we have lots of coffees actually. So the friendship's really important.
I told you it was good, very good. My style of governance, I suppose, is collaborative. I mean, respecting each other's gifts that they have. I mean, in the end of the day, I have to acknowledge my own vocation as bishop. So the bottom line, I have to sign, I have the responsibility. So that doesn't take away that. But I don't make decisions without consulting and talking to others and getting a feel from people. I think that's really, really important. So I mean, and to do that in a relaxed way. If you do it in a way that it's just purely business, you often get told what you want to hear. But if it's around a red wine or something like that, you find out what people really think. So and that's what I want. And it gives me joy to think that people are relaxed enough to say what they want. And you can have a wine or have a coffee, and people can come and you can have a whinge, or they can be constructive, and it's really good. So if someone says we think that's really good, well, I sort of believe it, rather than a lot of places the boss is just told what he wants to hear. And I think that's where that sort of friendship comes in. I mean, it doesn't mean to say it's less professional, but you treat each other with respect as persons, and I think that's, I like that sort of model, so it seems to work really well.
What are some of the keys to working together successfully as a bishop and a member of the faithful?
I think it's important too, in the role as a layperson, in the life of the church, is first and foremost is not to get on the mentality of ladder climbing. I think if you work for the church and for the bishop, like we all do, if you're on the mindset of ladder climbing, well then you're in the wrong position. You should go work for the Macquarie Bank. The whole point of working for a diocese is the mission of the gospel. And I think that's so important. And if you're not doing that, then you shouldn't be in the job. And that to me is in all aspects of the church. So what I believe as a layperson needs to do that. And once you can actually do that, know that you're working for the mission of the gospel, but most of all as well, the mission of the bishop in his role as guarding the faithful. Once you get that into your mindset, you're able to, the work becomes exciting, it becomes missionary, especially out here in a very isolated part of New South Wales. And that excitement and that missionary discipleship and the ability to help our parishes and our schools and our employers and our Aboriginal communities, etc. I think that's the key. It's that having the mission, and we talk a lot about, as a layperson, and unfortunately at the moment in the church, we're talking a lot about lay leadership, the laity need to do this, the laity need to do that. That's correct, I believe that also, but if you're not doing that with a sense of the mission of the church, the mission of the bishop, well then, it's all in vain. You've got to have that missionary discipleship in your mind, the love of the church, the love of the bishop, and most of all, the love of the gospel in our communities. And that's at the heart of making it successful between bishop and layperson.
What inspires and sustains you both in the challenges and isolation of ministering to the remote communities of the diocese?
I find that first and foremost, prayer, my faith, the sense of mission helps me to carry out my ministry as a bishop in a diocese like Wilcannia-Forbes. It's an isolated area, but I don't ever feel isolated because I'm with lovely people here. It's part of a family, as I said, so you don't feel isolated in a family. You feel isolated if you're excluded or if you somehow don't feel a part of the community. I don't feel that. So I feel, nourished by my staff and supported totally by my staff, the chantry, by my priests, by my education people, by Catholic care, by the average people in the pews in the parishes. So it's pretty good. I don't think physical, geographical isolation really equals personal isolation. So I'm and a sense of privilege, and not letting the mission, the responsibilities crush you. You just got to say, well, I'm here. I'll do my best. I didn't choose this. It's up to you, Lord. You help me. And I think if you can sort of come at it from that angle, it helps a lot in ministering out here, because a lot of the stuff physically is you never fix everything. It's just problem after problem after problem. So you've got to look for the joy. Look for the joy on the kids' faces when you go to confirmation, when you go for a farm visit. You look for the humour, you look for the good. If you don't actually positively look for the good around you in your ministry, then the bad will always be the thing that you'll remember most. So I think that'll just, the problems are lumped on you. You've got to always look out for the good and the joyful aspects. And that's what I believe, I really try and do that each and every day, is not let the negative ever overpower the positive. But you've got to look for the positive. Positive is not always apparent if you don't look for it.
One of the things we recently had an ordination to the priesthood. We had two of our guys be ordained to the priesthood together in the cathedral in Broken Hill. Now, Broken Hill is our largest town in the diocese, the cathedral. It's the Silver City. It's known as a city, not just a town. That's what they call it. It's completely isolated from the rest of the universe. Broken Hill is just in absolutely the middle of nowhere. Now, when you're organising, say, an ordination, people in the diocese don't care about travelling. They go. Because that's what we do in this diocese. We make an effort. Because I think first and foremost is diocesan pride. Second of all, being unified with the bishop. And we're a very resilient diocese and we work together. And our lay people who are involved in our parishes, they're just one of a kind. They're just all willing to do everything to make sure that the diocese is a united front. Despite our isolation, whether you're from Brewarrina, at the back of Burke, Broken Hill to Parks, we're unified. And it's quite inspirational. And when you sit from the administration side of things and actually see that at first hand, you go, what a special place this is and what a special role I have in my position, that I get to see the members of the body of Christ working truly to what the scriptures are telling us what to do. So, yeah, it's very important.